I always knew Avery wanted what I had. But I never thought she'd actually try to become me. My name is Rachel Morgan. I'm 28 years old, and until recently, I had what people would call a picture-perfect life. Junior associate at one of the top law firms in Manhattan, a cozy apartment in the Upper West Side, a small but tight circle of friends who didn't just talk about work, and the promise of being promoted to junior partner within the next year. Every inch of that life, I built with my own hands. No handouts. No shortcuts. Just grueling hours, late nights, and a stubborn refusal to quit. I came from a small town in upstate New York, the kind of place where people still leave their doors unlocked and everyone knows who made varsity before the school paper does. Our parents ran a hardware store. Honest, hardworking people who always taught me the value of earning your keep. I was the older sister, the one who never got into trouble, who stayed in and studied while Avery was sneaking out the bedroom window. Avery. 3 years younger, wilder, prettier in that impulsive, Instagram-filtered kind of way. Where I was cautious, she was reckless. Where I planned, she improvised. I used to bail her out when she got caught partying underage or blew her rent money on some online scam. Our parents always said, "She's just finding her way, Rachel. Help her. You're the responsible one." And I did. Every time. Until I couldn't anymore. It started small, little things I could brush off. An email from HR saying I missed a meeting I never scheduled. A bill from a credit card I never opened. A voicemail from an unknown number asking if I still needed the quote for that apartment in Miami. Odd, but I was swamped at work and assumed it was a mix-up. Maybe even spam. We all get weird stuff sometimes, right? Then came the hearing. I was prepping a deposition when my supervisor, Jameson, called me into his office. I remember the feeling vividly, like walking into a courtroom where you're the accused and have no clue why. "Rachel," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "I have to ask, did you intentionally leak the Windsor case files to the press?" I froze. "What? No. Of course not. Why would I?" He turned the screen to face me. There it was, a chain of emails from my address, sent from my firm account, to a reporter at the Daily Ledger. Confidential information. Our most high-profile case of the quarter. Ruined. "But I didn't send these," I said, my voice rising. I was at the deposition, I have time-stamped notes." Jameson's expression was unreadable. "I'm putting you on immediate leave, pending internal review. Legal is involved. You might want to talk to your own counsel." That night, I went home and tore through everything. Bank accounts. Emails. Socials. And that's when the pattern emerged. Logins from locations I'd never been to. Credit charges from boutiques in Los Angeles. Even my Uber account had rides in cities I hadn't stepped foot in. I called the credit bureau. Filed fraud reports. But the damage was already done. Within a week, I lost my job. The firm said they had to let me go to protect their name. My landlord issued a notice to vacate, citing a material breach in the rental agreement due to unpaid utilities, bills I'd never seen. My professional reputation was circling the drain, and no one was returning my calls. And through it all, my parents? Radio silence. I tried calling, but all I got was a text from my mother, "Rachel, you need help. Avery told us everything. Please don't drag the family into this." That was the moment something shifted in me. Because the one person who always had a way of escaping accountability, the one person I protected again and again, had finally gone too far. Avery had always wanted a shortcut to success. And now she found one. My name. She didn't just ruin me. She replaced me. But she underestimated one thing. I don't stay down. She stole my identity and my future. Now I'm going to take back my name, and I'm going to do it in the most brutal way possible. It's funny how quickly people vanish when your name turns toxic. Friends who once invited me to rooftop brunches or leaned on me for legal advice suddenly became unreachable. Emails bounced. Messages were read and ignored. Even the bar association, which I reached out to for help, seemed reluctant to get involved. Too messy. Too risky. I had become a ghost in my own life. But if there's one thing law school teaches you, it's how to track down the truth. I started with the basics. First, I ordered every piece of my credit history and combed through it line by line. There were accounts I never opened, credit cards linked to addresses in Miami and Dallas, even a car lease in California. All under my name. All very real. Then I did something no one ever expects you to do in the age of surveillance and algorithms. I showed up in person. One of the flagged addresses was a condo complex in Santa Monica. I drained what was left of my savings, booked a flight, and went west. I'd never been to California before, but when I stood outside the peach-colored stucco building with its oversized palm trees, I knew I was close. I could feel it in my bones. I waited. 3 hours later, a sleek black BMW pulled into the underground garage. The driver wore oversized sunglasses and had blonde hair, dyed, not natural, and carried herself with a confidence I knew all too well. Avery. She didn't see me. Not yet. I let her pass, memorized her access code from a safe distance, and booked myself a cheap motel 2 miles away. That night, I cried. Not because I was broken, but because it finally made sense. All the things that didn't add up. All the gut feelings I ignored. My little sister had stolen my name and built a fantasy life out of it. She was using my law credentials to apply for contract work, forging bar documents and practicing under a false identity. She was using my credit to fund her designer lifestyle, my work history to get into rooms I'd spent years fighting to enter. It wasn't just identity theft. It was character theft. Career theft. Life theft. And the worst part? She was doing it better than me. I spent the next few days gathering evidence. I followed her to a coffee meeting with a real estate developer, listened in on a pitch where she quoted legal precedents she barely understood. I recorded her using my bar number to sign off on a deal. I even got her talking to someone on the phone, someone she referred to as mom, saying things like, "Rachel's still spiraling. She won't stop blaming me for her mess. You know how she is." That broke me in a way I didn't expect. Because my mother believed her. But that heartbreak gave me focus. And I knew exactly what I had to do. Step 1: regain control of my identity. I returned to New York and filed a formal identity theft complaint with the FTC and the state bar. Then I compiled a digital dossier, photos, videos, audio, documents, and sent it to every institution she'd duped, the banks, the credit agencies, and most importantly, the licensing board. I included notarized letters, timestamps, and a video recording of her impersonating me at a business meeting. Step 2: isolate her. I called in favors. There were still a few old colleagues who hadn't ghosted me completely. One agreed to leak an anonymous tip about a woman impersonating a barred attorney in Santa Monica. Another helped me flag the car lease and freeze the fraudulent accounts. Slowly, I tightened the noose. Not enough to get her arrested just yet. But enough to get her noticed. And then I called her. Blocked number. No warning. She answered with a cheery, "Hello?" "Avery," I said. "You picked the wrong person to become." Silence. Then, "Rachel?" "Oh good," I said. "You recognize your own name." Click. She hung up. But that was all I needed. She was scared. And scared people make mistakes. The morning after that phone call, I expected some kind of retaliation, a nasty email, maybe a cease and desist from a lawyer she conned into thinking she had rights. But what I got instead was silence. It was eerie. I kept checking my phone, half expecting an apology, half expecting a threat. But nothing came. I went back to the motel mirror and stared at myself. My skin had broken out from stress, the dark circles under my eyes told the story no resume could. I'd always been the straight-A kid, the overachiever who skipped parties to study torts. Avery was the opposite, reckless, impulsive, magnetic in the way that makes you love her even when you shouldn't. Growing up, I thought our differences made us stronger as siblings. Turns out, they made me her perfect target. By mid-morning, the legal board contacted me. They were escalating my case to an internal review. Apparently, someone at a prestigious firm had come forward, confused by discrepancies in paperwork filed under my name. It was working. My truth was finally pushing its way through her lies. I had momentum. But I wasn't stopping there. With my savings gone, I crashed on a friend's couch in Brooklyn. Marisol and I had gone to law school together, and though we hadn't spoken much since graduation, she welcomed me without judgment. She even offered to help me dig deeper. It was Marisol who found the linchpin. Avery had forged a power of attorney document back when I was hospitalized briefly 2 years ago. That document, filed in an obscure court in upstate New York, granted her legal authority over my financial decisions. The signature looked eerily like mine, because it was. I remembered the time I signed a blank form during a chaotic hospital intake. She must have taken that and used it to generate the POA. It all made sense. That's how she got past the initial checks. She didn't just pretend to be me, she built the legal scaffolding to support the lie. We needed a plan. That night, Marisol and I created a timeline of every transaction, every contract, and every appearance Avery made under my name. We compiled a digital evidence portfolio, nearly 200 pages long. Then we made a list of every client Avery had worked with. If I was going to take her down, I couldn't just destroy her fake identity, I had to destroy the trust she built around it. The first domino fell 2 days later. One of her clients, a mid-tier real estate group in LA, received an anonymous email pointing out several critical errors in the contracts Avery drafted, errors that would void the deals and cost them millions. Attached were screenshots, recordings, and a PDF of my official bar complaint. An hour later, they emailed her back demanding clarification on her credentials. I was CC'd. Her reply was short, "Must be a misunderstanding." 2 more clients followed. Each day, more emails. More exposure. Her empire, built on my reputation, began to collapse. That Friday, I received a call. Unknown number again. It was her. "You think this is funny?" Her voice cracked, brittle with rage. "You're ruining my life, Rachel." I stayed silent. "You've always been jealous. You think just because you have the degree and the big words, you deserve everything? You were too weak to use it. I did what you never could." I breathed in slowly, steadying myself. "You didn't earn this life," I said. "You stole it." "You don't get it," she snapped. "They listen to me. They like me. They trust me more than they ever trusted you." That stung. Because deep down, I knew it had some truth. But facts didn't care about charisma. And the law didn't care about who was more likable. It cared about evidence. It cared about accountability. "I'm giving you one chance," I told her. "Come clean. Turn yourself in. Or I'll keep going. Until there's nothing left." She laughed. Cold. Hollow. "You think you can scare me?" "No," I replied. "But I can make sure you never sign another contract in my name again." And I meant it. Because the next move wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about reclaiming the life she'd tried to erase, and making sure she could never do this to anyone else again. By the following Monday, it felt like I was living in a legal thriller. Avery's world had begun crumbling, and the fallout wasn't just digital. Firms were withdrawing offers, clients were ghosting her, and the legal board had officially opened an investigation into our dual identity case. But as the dominoes kept falling, I realized something I hadn't accounted for: Avery was a cornered animal now, and cornered animals lash out. Marisol and I were reviewing affidavits from former interns who had briefly interacted with Avery when a knock rattled the apartment door. She wasn't expecting anyone, and neither was I. My gut clenched. Marisol answered the door cautiously, only to find a stack of papers taped to it. A subpoena. From Avery. She had filed for a restraining order, claiming harassment, defamation, and intentional interference with economic relations. Her affidavit painted a picture of me as a vindictive, mentally unstable sibling with a vendetta. She even included staged text messages I supposedly sent her, threats I'd never made, screenshots of fake burner accounts she claimed I used. I stared at the documents in disbelief. The audacity was staggering. Marisol grabbed my arm. This is her last play. She's trying to flip the narrative. And it almost worked. For a brief moment, I felt the walls tightening again, the shame rising like bile. But I reminded myself of everything I had. My records. My timeline. The contracts. The bank statements. The forged POA. Still, I had to be smarter. We immediately contacted a lawyer, Gina Torres, a partner at a firm that handled high-profile identity fraud cases. She was sharp, meticulous, and didn't blink when I laid out the mess. This is personal, she said after a pause. And that makes it dangerous. But not unwinnable. She filed a counterclaim and requested an emergency injunction to halt any further actions by Avery until the bar investigation concluded. At the hearing, I finally faced my sister in person. It was surreal. She walked into the courtroom like a celebrity shielding herself from paparazzi, oversized sunglasses, designer coat, lips pursed in defiance. She didn't look like someone unraveling. She looked like someone ready to put on a performance. And perform she did. She cried on the stand. Spoke about our childhood. Claimed I was always jealous of her spirit, her freedom, her beauty. Said I hated that clients responded to her charm more than my qualifications. I didn't flinch. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. I walked the court through the POA, the forged documents, the financial transfers, and then pulled out my ace, an audio recording I'd made of our last phone call. In it, her voice was crystal clear, "You didn't earn this life. I did what you never could." The judge listened in silence. Avery's lawyer tried to object, saying the recording was inadmissible. But I had recorded it legally, and I'd disclosed it before the hearing. The judge nodded and dismissed the restraining order on the spot. Our counterclaim? It moved forward. By the time we left the courthouse, Avery wasn't wearing her sunglasses anymore. The following week, I met with representatives from the state bar. They'd seen enough. Her license was being revoked. Criminal charges were being recommended to the DA. And they'd be contacting every client she'd ever represented. I should have felt victorious. But instead, I felt hollow. She was still my sister. And as much as I hated her for what she'd done, part of me couldn't understand how we ended up here. How someone I shared bunk beds and birthday cakes with had become the villain in the story of my life. That night, I found a memory card buried in an old folder on my laptop. Inside it were photos of Avery and me, at prom, at graduation, at our father's funeral. Faces full of a bond I'd thought was unbreakable. I stared at one picture for a long time. She had her arm around me, smiling wide. And I realized something cruel, she had probably started planning the con even then. I didn't cry. I just closed the folder. Because this wasn't about grief anymore. It was about justice. The final move was already in play, and it would be the one that ended her career, her lies, and her stolen legacy. The morning I walked into the DA's office, the sky over downtown Chicago was a cold, steely gray. It felt appropriate. I wasn't there for vengeance, I was there for finality. Closure. Accountability. The assistant district attorney, a lean, serious woman named Lena Cho, was waiting with a box of documents I'd submitted, along with new files they'd gathered from financial institutions, law firms, and even my old university. "Rachel," she said, motioning for me to sit. "This is the strongest civilian-led case I've seen in a long time. We'll be moving forward." It was surreal. Criminal charges, wire fraud, forgery, falsifying legal credentials, impersonation, and obstruction. All against my sister. And yet, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. I felt tired, but determined. That week, news of the indictment hit the legal world like wildfire. Law blogs picked it up. Local news stations ran segments on it. Online forums speculated about the downfall of the once rising star, Avery Morgan. Her face was everywhere, usually next to mine. I watched one segment alone, muted, wine in hand. Her photo appeared next to mine, a split screen of sisters turned adversaries. The headline read, "From Blood to Betrayal, the Morgan Identity Fraud Case." I almost laughed. Marisol didn't. "You're not done yet," she reminded me. "You haven't reclaimed your future. Just cleared the wreckage." She was right. So, I went back to the firms who had rejected me. All of them. I laid out what had happened. Not in some plea for pity, but as a demonstration of resilience. I included my verified transcript, my work samples, my law review citations. Some listened. Most didn't. But one did, Carter and Graham, a mid-sized firm that had initially ghosted me. I sat across from the managing partner, Richard Graham, and told him everything. He listened without interruption, then asked one question: "If you could do it all again, knowing what your sister would do, would you still pursue law?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "Because it's mine. Not hers." He smiled. I started the following Monday. Meanwhile, Avery was unraveling. She had no job. No bar license. No more bank accounts in her name. Her face was on every legal blacklist in the country. The hearing date for her trial was set. But before it came, she reached out. An email. Subject line, "Please." For a second, I hovered over it. Then I clicked. The message was brief: "I know I ruined everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I was scared. You were always ahead. I thought, if I could become you, I'd finally be someone. I'm sorry." I stared at the screen. And then I wrote back, "You didn't need to become me. You needed to become someone you could live with. I hope prison gives you that chance." I never got a reply. The trial was short. She pled guilty. The sentence, 7 years in federal prison with eligibility for parole after 4. I didn't attend the sentencing. I didn't need to. My identity was mine again. My career, my reputation, my name, all restored. But what surprised me most wasn't reclaiming what had been stolen. It was discovering what I'd built in the process. A spine of steel. A voice that didn't shake. A circle of people who stood by me not because of who I was supposed to be, but because of who I'd fought to remain. I now speak at conferences about digital fraud and familial betrayal. I mentor law students. I smile again without feeling like an imposter in my own skin. Because sometimes, taking back your future doesn't just mean undoing the damage. It means rewriting the ending.